Start your mornings with something extraordinary. Introducing Monkey Werx Chimpurado, a delicious Mexican canela medium roast with irresistible notes of chocolate and cinnamon. Each cup transports you to the heart of Mexico, where the rich flavors of Mexican cinnamon meet the smoothness of medium roast coffee, kissed by a hint of chocolate. It's more than just coffee. It's a warm embrace, a moment of connection, and the perfect start to your day. Monkey Werx's Chimpurado, for those who crave excellence in every sip. Available now at monkeywerx.com.
All right. Hey, welcome, folks. It's going to be your SITREP. It's 1/21/2025, and we have just entered the golden era of America. Or, well, we will see. Well, you know what? There are a lot of things happening. We are coming to you live here from the Monkey Lounge in the great state of Texas, and Trump is off to the races. I do think that had this been an outdoor event, had there been an outdoor parade, had there been a lot of those other things, we would have probably a different outcome. I do believe that although they will say, you know, it was weather was the factor, this stuff and all of the venues and events were moved around. And I believe it was because of security threats, right? And so I'm going to show you a couple things. We are not going to lose sight of what's going on in California. I'm going to give you a couple more data points I think are interesting, to say the least. We're going to talk about what's going on with all of the pardons that good old Flashbang issued there at the last minute. And, of course, we are going to get back into Guantanamo Bay Watch because you have to have eyes on this every single day, because guess what? They wipe the flights. I'm going to show you an instance of that. Why would they wipe it? Interesting. And then, of course, we've got the arrival of a reporter that is now showing up at Guantanamo Bay. And it's not what you think. It's a different topic. And this is going to be interesting. We'll get into all of that. And, of course, we are going to look at Ukraine, because what we're doing is we're looking at the time leading up to now Trump taking over. We're going to see a different, most of the flight patterns will change. There's no two ways about it, because we're going to be in a different mode, and other countries around the world are going to be in a different mode. So we'll have eyes on that as well. Don't think we are out of the woods. In fact, I would say that we are probably now in one of the most dangerous times in our country, because now you have to remove all of the people that the Biden administration has brought into our country intentionally and illegally, okay? And you see, Trump's pushing troops down to the southern border, and he's done a lot of really interesting executive orders right out of the gate. Now, that's good that we have them down at the southern border, but I will tell you, that's not where they're coming across. Yeah, it's good to have that presence. We'll build a wall, and then we don't have to worry about it as much. But look, the old regime was flying them into our country. I've shown you the flights, and it was absolutely treasonous. And so we're going to look at all of this. Now, let's do this. Let's bounce over. I want to start off over in the mini. We're going to check out Skyglass. And just note, currently up 159, but I've stripped out, a fair amount of trainers. Not a lot. Not as many as one would think. Typically on a beautiful day like we have out right now, we'd be sitting at around 100, 150 trainers up. That's not the case. It's maybe 70 at best, okay? Now, you can see it is quite busy. East Coast is very active today. I'm not really sure what exactly this is right here. I suspect it's a balloon, but because it is over the water and it is also not moving. It's at zero altitude, no forward speed, anything. I'm going to go ahead and hit that little button there, which will add it to my watch list quiver. And then, of course, we've got some new birds we're going to be looking at as well, tied to Guantanamo Bay. And interesting things going on down there, like I said. All right, let's do this. First and foremost, let's get over here to our watch list before we get into the news. And just to show you what is up from a surveillance perspective, you'll notice Airborne Express. You've got this one. I thought that was a Firebird given the color, but it says surveillance on the side of the airplane. So I'm not really sure what that's all about, but that looks to be right there at the Vancouver, Washington State border. And then you'll just notice down south, that was a little Janus. That's the airline that flies people out to Area 51, China Lake, etc. Notice there is a handful of surveillance flights up. You can see the round circles. That right there is one of your gray birds, right? The Uber for your agencies. Now, you'll see some traces, right? We're going to get back to these. Notice it comes out of kind of Caracas, in and out of Caracas, in and out of Guantanamo Bay. Yeah, you know where I'm going with that, right? We'll look at some EOs that Trump just signed on the J6 piece. Okay, but just wanted to point that out. We will show you those flights here in just a minute. That's not going to be all we talk about, okay? We're going to get into that in a lot more detail because, you know, the shenanigans, you got to catch them in the act. This is how Guantanamo Bay works, all right? And then you can see we've got a couple E3s and a little Italian intelligence gathering plane. You see this when you get in Zoom. You can see that little doghouse on the side. And yeah, so the world is still spinning. No two ways about that. Okay, let's talk about intel flights. And we'll start out over here in kind of South Korea, out of Okinawa. Remember, the president of South Korea just got arrested. This is going to be interesting to see what happens now that Trump is in. Yeah, don't think the deep state just goes away because Trump is in. In fact, they just go into hiding and they start all their shenanigans up en masse. So off the coast of Israel, of course, we've got hostage release going on right now. And then you'll just notice it is very active up into Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and then around Moldova. Now, that's not today. That is up to yesterday, last 3 days. And then over the United States, just notice a very weird pattern that we're missing. You know, while the inauguration was happening, there was a lack of any type of aircraft up around the area that intel flights, you would expect to see that. Nothing. Homeland Security, nothing. The drone, there was one drone that went up. That flight was wiped. Not showing. If I look at the drones, we'll look at that in just a minute. They're looking, look, they're going right around the mountain range there. Right? Now look at the drones. And you'll just notice a little blip out of Japan. Kind of goes dark. That's a U.S. asset there. Right? Kind of in between India and China. That's interesting, to say the least. And then, of course, we get over here and notice the flights coming out of Dubai, out of Bahrain, going across Iraq over to Turkey. You'll see a lot of activity. Look at this Q4 drone and how many flights this thing has performed in 3 days around Kaliningrad, around kind of that northern flank of Poland, all the way up just to the eastern side, western side of St. Petersburg, Russia, right up into the Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia regions. And then you'll see off the west coast and a flight that just kind of goes back and forth from DC. But notice we just had inauguration. I got nothing. I also didn't have any flights from the nuke sniffers during the inauguration or leading up to it. Very bizarre. Just goes to show you the current administration was like, we're just going to let him ride it out, man. Okay, this R-135, this is the nuke sniffer, and I just want to point out that one was, the last time we checked in, just notice it was out over that particular area. Now, if we get into, let me back away from that piece. That was going to be the only nuke sniffer that I saw up prior to the inauguration, all right? And that was days before. Okay, so there's that piece. Now look at the E6 traffic. And this was up till yesterday, right? Remember, this is take charge, move out. It's a command aircraft talking to your nukes. Just notice it gets out off the coast of California. It kind of flies across the left side of the United States. Nothing out east. Nothing. Okay, and then you get to AWACS. There was not a single AWACS flight in the last 3 days over the United States. But just notice the man-in-the-middle stuff over Europe, over Constanta, right? Again, we're going to see these flight patterns probably change depending on what happens with Trump, what happens with Ukraine, okay? Now, we look at the air refueling, and it is very light, very bizarre. Notice down here in the danger boxes off the Southern California coastline, right? You see these long transitions? That's usually moving fighters from one side to the other, okay? Those long transitions, they're just basically, fighters are following an air refueler. I see a single flight that looks to go down into the Med, and then you can see a little bit of stuff there around Poland, over here into Israel. Right? Actually, that's into Lebanon. So why did we fly into Lebanon? Well, maybe it has to do with the fact that we just gave them $140 million. Probably pallets of cash if I were a betting man. Yeah, look at this around Japan. Look how busy and active that was up until Trump coming into office. Nothing down under. Yeah, the flights into Lebanon, I just read an article that just before Biden left office, he gave more money to the Lebanese. More of your tax dollars, by the way. We're going to look at something else relative to spending here in the United States I think is very interesting. That's may come as a surprise to many of you. All right. Now, look at the Aussies. All right, we go down under. This is about 220 plus aircraft. I've stripped out all of the trainers. So what you see are just straight up, the core Australian military, all right, off the coast there, off the East Coast. Headed north, kind of some disappearing flights. And we'll keep an eye on the Aussies just because, it's always interesting to see where they're headed, what other militaries are doing, especially with Trump in. Now, the interesting piece was look at the amount of flights in and out of Australia into probably, if I'm guessing, it was a multinational red flag event going on there in Nellis. That's probably where those were headed, okay? All right. Now, we're going to look at a couple of things that I want to this is rebaselining, okay? We had H-47s moving around quite a bit up to the inauguration, and then I haven't seen anything kind of snap back where they've picked stuff up and brought it back. They seem to have deployed assets in various locations. But if you go look at the last 3 days over the United States with H-47s, it's almost nothing. I see a little bit of activity out of Fort Hood. I see it kind of into the middle of the United States, and I see some moves out towards Vegas and over into New Mexico, but really nothing to speak of from an H-47. Now you go to C-130s, and you'll notice a little bit of activity there over in the Asian Pacific side. You get over here to Europe, and there's a little bit of stuff happening down into Crete, down around into the Ivory Coast of Africa. Now, these are U.S. military C-130s, by the way. Just make sure you know that I'm not pulling in other countries in. This is just strictly pure U.S. military. Out over the Gulf of Mexico, the whole southern flank, right? We haven't even begun to deploy assets yet. That's just up until yesterday when Trump took office. Now, the next time we get together, we should see some flights and activity down to our southern border. All right, but that's going to be your C-130s. And let me see, was there anything else? I think we've got all of it covered. The drone stuff, let me just point out the drone. I think maybe I did actually already talk about the part over Japan. The interesting piece, let me just go forward because as I mentioned, yeah, we did look at the drone stuff. I do want to take us over here to the United States. Now, you would think that while we had an inauguration taking shape, that there would have been drone activity right up here over the East Coast. I did see one that was airborne, and it is not showing. Okay, so they wiped that flight. But there was a lack of nuke sniffers. There was a lack of, and I mean up to the day of the inauguration, right? Who controlled all of that prior to Trump? It would have been flashbang, okay? But there was a lack of drones, a lack of Homeland Security, a lack of intel, just a lack of sniffers, everything that you would think you would see heading up to a very important event that really had hardly any coverage. So it just goes to show you how devious the previous administration was. Okay. Now, let me take you back over here. Let's get into some of the news. I want to point out, before we get too deep into this, I want to bring this up again because it's really not getting a lot of traction. I think people are just not really focusing on exactly what was said. And we're going to cover a couple of those things, okay? When it comes to the Iranians. Now, take a look. 31,244 emergency responses, 207 wildfires, 40,000 acres. This is preliminary pending coroner confirmation, 27 fatalities. I'll bet you can add a couple zeros to that, okay? 15,000 structures burned, all right? Almost 15,500. That's where the fires are still kind of going. So that has not gone away. Now, we go over here to the headline piece. And again, I'm going to point out the day the fires began, this, according to Iranian TV, in the coming hours, the world will witness unusual scenes and developments. Now, let's go a little further because this piece, let me hide that. This article right here. Now, pay attention to this. The Islamic State terrorists published in their weekly newspaper instructions and tips on arson and released a long article on the fires of California saying it is retribution from Allah. Okay? It also states that in these hard times for the USA is a perfect time for the lone wolf attacks against the West. Right? So I showed you Iranian TV. In the coming hours, you're going to see some things that are going to just really be hard to get your head around. And then the California wildfires started. And they started arresting people, left, right, and center for arson. All right. We saw it on video. We saw a lot of different things happening. So don't lose sight of that because I don't think anybody is focused on what was said by the Iranians. And I don't think they're connecting the dots, quite frankly. I don't think people are connecting the dots. All right. Well, this is a breath of fresh air. I no longer can see the name of Joe Biden at the top. All right. And hopefully this will be one of the last times we talk about him other than maybe being convicted for treason and maybe we may get to see a trial. I don't think he would live through it, but he is definitely up there in age. Okay. And his brain is, well, maybe it was all an act. Okay. You can remember I showed you several times where old, Sleepy Joe, Creepy Joe, well, they all fit, don't they? How many times he said at the beginning, he was with Harris, and he said something to the effect that I will just, come up with a disease and step down, right? That I'll say I've got to step away for health problems. Exactly what happened, and that was 4 years before it happened. So. Part of the plan? Probably. But this is everything that Trump is up to today. You can see the dude. Now, this is just your big takeaway from this. He basically left the ball at 12:43 a.m. That was a very long day. That would be a long day for a young buck, but he's not a young buck. And I can imagine Melania in her shoes. Her feet had to be killing her. So, I did like her outfit. I thought it was pretty snazzy, very gangster looking with the hat. Kind of reminded me of Mask, with, where he's got the gangster hat on and, all she really needed was some pinstripes and a couple Tommy guns and we'd have been off to the races, right? All right. Now, this just as disgusting behavior. But look, you only give preemptive pardons if people are guilty. If they got nothing to hide, they don't have anything to worry about. Check this out. The pardons were given to General Milley, Fauci, and the J6 committee members, right? Liz Cheney, etc. Why? Because they are guilty, right? Milley was caught using direct energy weapons against protesters at J6. And then that just came out, right? And then, of course, Liz Cheney, they were getting rid of content, things that, would have basically freed the J6 folks. So that's, destroying evidence. That's a crime, okay? And then why Fauci's up here, right? So, look, don't think they're going to get off scot-free. Just because their preemptive pardoning takes place, that is at the federal level. The states can still prosecute these folks. Hopefully they do. Hopefully we start to see some people get held accountable. We'll see. And then it didn't stop there, all right? On top of that, he pardons 5 family members involved in his family business. Now, he didn't pardon himself, and he didn't pardon Jill, from what I could tell. He didn't pardon Harris. He didn't pardon the Obamas, the Bushes, the Clintons, any of them. When you start talking about crimes against humanity. So I'm going somewhere with this. But the fact that he comes in and basically preemptive, again, everybody that's involved in his family business tells you there's a smoking gun there, right? Where there's smoke, there's fire. And you'd only do that if there is guilt. If you got nothing to hide, then you don't do it. These people can still be called to the stand, by the way, and they can't plead the fifth. They actually have to answer questions. So he could have just basically handed them the rope to go after this guy, right? The big guy. So pay attention to that. Now, here's one. The big setup, man. I told you they're doing everything they can to really just lock Trump up in terms of, and I don't mean in prison, but I just mean in terms of his ability to get things done. You look at, this is Yellen, her last official act, basically warns the U.S. will hit the ceiling, the debt ceiling, one day after, so that's today, all right? I have seen nothing that basically increases it, but wait and see. The day's still young. But this is that's a bad thing, because if we default on our debt, then it calls loans. It does a lot of different things that it can potentially alter our economy. And so anyway, there you have that. That just came out. That was on the 18th. That was a couple days ago, but that is today. All right. It goes into effect. All right. Trump to declare a national emergency at the southern border, and he stopped the catch and release policy. There are people actually going the other direction now, which is says a lot. All right. But all the asylum seekers, everything else, right, they're going to be turned around. He's getting ready to staff up. He's putting the wall back up. He's getting ready to put military down there. That may be actually a good thing, too, because if you've got the CCP, right, the Chinese that are down there with their special operations in Mexico, you want to ensure that they don't come to the border or across the border. It also ties into him declaring the cartel as a terrorist organization. And then here's another one, right? Anchor babies. He just signed another order that basically stops them from coming over the border, having their babies, and then having a path to citizenship through that. One other thing that he did, and I thought was pretty interesting, and I thought actually, and you may have noticed, all the flags in D.C. were still at half staff, right? And I don't know if that was because of Carter or whatever it may be, but he actually put an EO out that said, on Inauguration Day, flags will not be flown at half staff. They did that. That was just their little, way of getting to him. But the fact that he had to write an EO to change that, and I will say my flag was not and has not been at half staff. I would not fly a flag at half staff for Jimmy Carter if he was the last human being on the planet, okay? All right, here's one more. Trump administration ends the CBP One immigration app moments after taking office. In fact, they were turning people around in the Middle East. They were trying to get on to flights, and the flights were actually canceled. So now let's do this. I'm going to take you over because I think this is important just to show you what they were doing up to that moment. This is the last 3 days. Notice Global X has scaled back quite a bit, but you will see they were at the border right up until yesterday. flying people into our country, okay? That's Global X. Now you look at Omni. Let me just show you the flurry of activity that was happening at our southern border. Now, yeah, you've got some stuff down in Southeast Asia and a couple flights into Europe. But look at this. This was last 3 days up to Trump's inauguration. And you'll see the flurry coming out of Central America all the way down into Panama. Look at how many flights are in and out of Colombia. All right. Just incredible. Treason. Okay. And we're going to get to all that here in just a minute. So there's your Omnis. Pay attention to it. Don't lose sight of it, because we're going to be watching that very closely to see where the flights are going, and they better be taking people out of our country if they even get the business anymore. All right, look at this. Trump signs executive order directing the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. Again, he has pulled us out of it. Remember, Biden put us back in it, and Obama put us in it. Well, he is basically taking us out of it. So I am sure that all of the climate change people are going to be definitely butthurt level bravo. Right? Trump suspends U.S. financial aid to other countries. That does include Ukraine. So it says here it's just basically suspending for 90 days while they reassess. So we'll get over there and see what's going on with Zelensky and everything else. But pay attention to that one, because that's your tax dollars that we have been sending out of our country for so long. Dumbest thing we could ever do. I don't know why we continue to do it, especially when we've got so many hurting here in our own country and we are doing nothing for them. And then here's the really beautiful one. Trump pulls the U.S. from the World Health Organization. So we're no longer part of the WHO. They can go pack sand. But I think that one's a pretty good one. All right. And maybe the next thing will be NATO and the UN. All right. Get away from all of that. All right. Over here to the NOTAMs. Just notice you still have this one out in the North Atlantic, and then this one off the coastline of Portugal. And more than likely, these are just military operations or exercises happening. We're going to be watching the U.S. very closely in the coming days, because as we start to deport people, that's where things should start to get pretty interesting. I did see something say that there was going to be a raid today deploying 200 police officers in Chicago. Now, you go, why Chicago? Well, that one is kind of interesting. There was a HVAC lady in one of the apartment complexes in Chicago that had gone into one of the buildings just to do her normal check, right? They go around, they change air filters, whatever. They put notices out that they're going to be coming through, but they have a key to every apartment. And they go in and they do their thing and they leave. Well, this one, she actually went in, and all of a sudden, as she gets in the door, she realizes there are a ton of IDs in there, passports, cash, C4, and a lot of other things, basically making explosives inside. So could that be tied to why we're about to see 200 officers descend upon a location here in Chicago? Maybe. It is definitely immigrant related. And so the fact that they were making bombs should scare all of us. Okay? Not good. All right. This is really the crux of all of this. Trump pardons approximately 1,500 J6 political hostages. So last night, they were actually being released from prison like late yesterday evening. He signed off on the EO, and the minute that happened, they started basically letting everybody out. Now, I went immediately over to Guantanamo Bay because I have said several times they are holding these folks prisoner at Guantanamo Bay, just based on the flights I've been watching, etc. So I decided, okay, well, let's pop on over there and check out what's going on at Gitmo. We're going to start watching Gitmo very closely now. Some of the things that I did in the past, I will probably not repeat because the threats that came along with them. But there'll just be certain little topics I won't talk about, but we'll get into the obvious and the things that most people will be able to see, open source kind of thing, all right? You see the board is blank. Today's 21st, and nothing on the board. Let me just go to the arrivals, and you'll see nothing on the board, okay? It's Tuesday. We typically have flights that come in on Tuesday, always have, right? Friday, Tuesday is kind of the big days coming in and out. Now, they wipe the board beyond anything they go basically 12 days or so, and then anything beyond that just disappears. You never see it. You'll never have eyes on it. Just notice you had a couple flights that came in from Joint Base Andrews on Saturday, right? One flight in and out that was round robin. Now, none of these guys have been released yet. If I was a betting man, that it is highly probable that they made them sign some type of a non-disclosure because it was Guantanamo Bay. But the fact that they are hiding the flights that came in today that picked up prisoners and took them out, J6 prisoners, the optics on that. You think about sending U.S. citizens, Americans that were basically set up. The fact that you sent them to Guantanamo Bay, that speaks volumes. And it's probably not something that they want to really let people know, okay? So here we go. Let's go over to the flight. This one right here, you notice the flight is, it's a private owner. Southern Cross LLC was the name of the company. This is your tail number right here, but this shows you Guantanamo Bay, all right? That is what the aircraft looks like. I've added it to my quiver, so I'll be able to track this thing wherever it goes. But right here, right, you can see Guantanamo Bay, Fort Lauderdale, right? That happened this morning, and you can see this thing where it's been, and here it is, right? Out of Lauderdale, down to Guantanamo, and back to Lauderdale, right? And that happened at the wee hours of the morning. We'll keep our eye on it. I haven't seen any other flights go down there. This is a pretty small aircraft. You could probably get a good 6 or 8 people on there if you had political prisoners. But it doesn't stop there, because there's another interesting data point for you that I think you're going to find very interesting. And that is this. I saw that Catherine Herridge basically said, hey, I'm headed to Guantanamo Bay for trials, all right? Now, this one we're going to keep our eye on because she's there, and she's basically staying down there, and she's going to be reporting on trials that are coming up. Now, in her video, I heard her mention something about 9/11, etc. But I think there's more to this. I really do. It says here, no idea yet what her target is, but she's never been one to basically troll or drive clickbait. Going to keep a close eye on this one. And this is over on TexAgs. But, she starts off a little video. She arrives, and she's talking about now that Trump's in office, there's going to be some trials that are going to be seen. Now, we know the J6 folks got released. So that tells me that there are other folks down here, and I think it's not, there could be a 9/11 stuff in. I'm not thinking that that's going to be the main deal. I think there may be some other folks we haven't seen in a while that are going through trials, and now that Trump is back, they are going to be basically prosecuted. So pay close attention to this. Again, we're going to now be watching on a daily basis stuff going in and out of Guantanamo Bay. Like I said, there is a detention or actually an immigrant camp down there as well. So don't lose sight of that. There are they're bad guys down there, Camp Justice, right? I think we're going to be surprised at who's down there, quite frankly. All right, let's get over here to this piece just to show you what's leaving out of Biggs Army Airfield, and this will also subside. But this one is an Omni flight that's leaving this morning at 9:15 and headed to Baltimore, actually en route coming in from Baltimore, Washington. So don't know what that is all about, but this camp that is here at Biggs Army Airfield or Fort Bliss holds about 15,000 people, and more than likely they're going to be leaving here and getting shipped out of the country. That's what we should see. We're going to make sure it happens. We're going to be watching it closely, okay? And then this is Dover. Just you'll see that you've got quite a few flights coming in, wide bodies still. And then look where they're headed. They're still going to RZE. That's today. So whatever we had already in the docket to be delivered to Ukraine is still headed out. 747s. This should start to subside. And then if Trump does what he should do, we should see all of that stop. All right. You may see flights coming back, which will be bringing the stuff back to us. Okay. And then, of course, you've got 2 Camber flights, one coming out of Rota, and then the other one out of Bahrain. Okay. Moving on. And the Brits, they've got 5 on the board, and they're kind of all over the place. So let's go up here. You can see just right down the middle. I mean, you can see this is coming out of Doha, right? And this one's out over the Red Sea at 24,000 feet and climbing, probably getting over this weather if I was a betting man. Just about to head out over Egypt. And then you can see a couple more, one out over the Mediterranean and one out near Italy at 40,000 feet. Now, this is going to be Ramstein, and you'll just notice you got a 747 arriving. Airborne Express is coming in. Now, the one thing that I'm watching to make sure there aren't any Omni flights picking up people headed to JFK, because that would be an indicator that they're still bringing people into our country. So now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of things that he's not all knowing, all seeing, right? Trump's not going to be able to see everything that's coming into our country. So we're going to try to be his eyes and ears. I know he has people that work for him that follow me, and we'll just going to keep them honest, okay? And this right here, we'll tip our hat to what is happening if they try any shenanigans while he's in office. Don't put it past him, and I don't mean Trump, but I'm talking about the former administration, to try and sneak some more folks in from Ramstein into JFK. We're going to be watching it very, very closely. Okay, now this is RZE Poland. It's a forward operating base. If you've seen me talk about it here, the border of Ukraine is right here. So it is very close proximity. Not as close as Constanta is to Crimea, but it's pretty close, okay? Just notice 747. This one's coming in from Doha. You get down a little further, and from Dover, another 747, Dover, another, just look at the 747s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 747s, 6 747s coming in to RZE Poland. So this is all the stuff that Flashbang promised that is being delivered. Now, I mentioned to you that there was something happening with the Iranians with respect to California. I do truly believe that they are probably behind that, okay? This piece tells me that our agency is definitely got their hands mixing things up, okay? All behind the scenes, probably never hear about it because that's what our agency does. But you see this right here? These are protests that have been popping out all around Iran. If I go to the dates and I just go back, you will see additional locations. You just kind of go through it. These are all protests. So definitely things happening over there that we're not hearing about, okay? Now you get over here to Ukraine, and this is where I think it becomes interesting because the Russians are still popping things off, and you can see the Ukrainians are still popping things off into Russia. That's a drone attack. This is a hit that, hit. Let me just see where that was. Armed Forces of Ukraine have claimed responsibility on attacks on an oil depot. So they're hitting Russian oil and then all of this stuff. So let's watch what happens now that Trump is in office. I think he's going to stop the funding going to them. He'll stop delivering things. And then I think Russia is probably going to take this all the way to Kiev and take out Zelensky. Just to, throwing that out there because I think that's what we're going to see. All right. Okay. Well, listen, that is going to do it for SITREP today. It's, we're entering that very interesting time in our country's history. And I think we need to all be very much on our toes because as Trump starts to kick these people out of our country, I think you're going to start to see us stumble upon a lot of cells that are embedded and have been here and are set up, ready to roll. And it doesn't by any means mean the threat is over. In fact, I think the threat is just at the probably highest level that it has been in a while. They weren't going to do it when Biden's in because he's letting them in the country. Now that Trump is in, it's a different game. All right, folks, that's it. We'll see you on Thursday with our next SITREP. You guys keep that powder dry, stay frosty. Remember, if you want peace, prepare for war because it's coming. All right, that's it. God bless. Monkey out. Artisan handcrafted soaps. Get yours in the Monkey Werx shop today.